Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, VIP Financial Ed. My name is Matthew Pillmore. I'm the president of a company called VIP Financial Education, and sitting beside me today is one of the most gorgeous women in the entire planet. Her name is KellyAnne Zielinski, and she is my far better half, my significant other, my life partner, and somebody that has in so many ways completely transformed my entire life, and I'm bringing her onto the channel to do the exact same thing for some of you. And I've been anxiously awaiting this day for a long time, and it's finally here. So I can't wait to start digging in and learning more about how her expertise can influence what you're trying to do through the knowledge that you're gaining here. Before we bring her in to start sharing that information, just a couple quick pieces of information that we should cover. Number one, if this is your first time on the channel, we're here to help you go further financially and much faster than you normally would. And we do that through a collection of banking and borrowing techniques. What we teach is very special. It's how to not let the banks take control over you, how to really maximize your general borrowing strength, your credit profile, how you can access lots and lots of capital and start putting that money to work. And we've spent years and years and years breaking down the mathematics to just prove that what we teach actually works. And what I failed to recognize for a long time was just how influential personality compatibility is to your success in using this arithmetic. The math is only as good as the person behind it. So I want to make sure that we address some of the additional self-leadership topics that have yet to be talked about here on this channel. We've been really kind of taking this a different direction over the past many months. So if you're new to the channel, you'll see a transition from videos that we were doing years ago into what we're doing now. And if I were to come in and start demonstrating more of the arithmetic, which we will do moving forward, it's just going to continue to prove what we have talked about for many years previous. How much math do I have to go through before somebody is actually convinced that this does work? It's in some ways pointless. It's just kind of exciting and fun to do. So what I've really been doing is taking a different spin and starting to introduce a lot of the mental changes that are necessary to succeed. And that's really what this is all about today. And if it wasn't for this woman here, guys, I would have been in a completely different position than I am right now. Even just 1 year ago, I was in a completely different position than I am right now. And that's really where this story begins. I was lucky enough to meet this wonderful person to my right a little over 2 years ago now. We were introduced due to circumstantial geography. She actually was a resident in the same building that we both live in here again today. And guys, this is our little mini mansion, or even it's exponentially larger than a normal mansion, I guess you could argue. And we've taken our viewers on a tour of this place in the past. So if you haven't checked out that video yet, make sure you review the videos and see it for yourself. But this is just our little paradise in the single greatest place of all of downtown Denver, which is the single greatest place in all of Colorado that you can possibly be. And it is an exploding city. You'll hear some background noises, I'm sure, throughout today's training, and I do apologize in advance for that. But we love being outside. We're both outdoors people. And I have to kind of give you a recap of what happened for me in order for you to understand just how important this topic is today and how much you will be influenced by what this woman has to teach in future videos too. Today's topic is all about why maybe isn't this working for you. Maybe you've been following us now for days, weeks, months, or even years. Maybe you've tried to practice some of what you see us teaching on the channel, and maybe you're just not getting all the results that you want. Bottom line is, it's probably going to have something to do with what KellyAnne is going to be teaching us now. For me, I was coming off of a really tough season last year. I was working harder than ever. I was being pulled in every which direction because our topics and the lessons that we travel and teach are in high demand, and I just refused to say no to anything. And part of the problem was I was lying to myself for a very, very long time. In fact, I've been lying to myself now for about 10 years as a national public speaker. And part of the reason for that was I just simply kind of said to myself, this is what I have to do. It was obligatory. I mean, I just felt like it was part of my responsibility as the president and one of the more knowledgeable folks comprehensively about everything we teach, that I really needed to be on the road and sharing when requested. And when KellyAnne entered into my life, a lot changed. First of all, she instantly recognized that there was a deficiency of self-love. She pointed it out immediately, to which I was very reluctant to admit to that. I mean, it's tough to actually say, oh, hey, listen, I have it all. I literally don't want anything materialistically, and yet I'm miserable. To say those two things a lot of times is confusing to your mind. And so it's easier for certain people to identify that from the outside looking in, and she's trained to see it. And she really dedicated herself and her time and her energy to helping me grow through that. And we became dear, dear friends, best friends, and that evolved into the love that we have today. And I've never been in a position like this where I'm as happy as I am, and I feel luckier than I've ever felt. And you know, it's interesting because in so many ways I don't think luck had anything to do with it at all. It's just manifestation and this natural progression of when you love yourself first, everything else tends to come along. And so I'm really interested to see how she ties together, you know, my personal experience with what she's going to teach you, because I think there's going to be a lot to the self-love aspect behind self-leadership. And so her company is exploding, no surprise there. I want her to give you the background of Self-Leadership Global, her firm. We recently just got done with a big retreat for her company here in the mountains of Breckenridge, just absolutely gorgeous. Had something around 50 attendees to that retreat. And guys, this is what will make or break you in using what we teach on this channel, is everything that comes out of this woman's mouth. So why don't we go ahead and just kind of transition into your background. Tell us a little about how you got into a place where you are nationally known as one of the foremost leading experts on self-leadership. How'd you get here?
Good question.
Thank you. I'm very grateful that you made it.
Thanks for asking. So, hi everybody, I'm KellyAnne Zielinski. My journey started in Buffalo, New York, and like a lot of people, I started out in what could be considered the corporate world. I was in the field of education in a 9-to-5, and I was about 4 years into being a teacher and felt like I wanted more, but I didn't know what more was, and I didn't know how to get it. And so I started studying the most successful people in history. I put myself on a self-made study program, just really trying to figure out what the difference was that made the difference between people who were successful in all areas of life. So kind of like Matthew, I had everything on the outside, right? So I had the job, and I had a pension, and I had insurance, and I had great people in my life, and I was living on my own. And so everything from the outside said that I should be happy, and for whatever reason on the inside, I was miserable. And so I had to do a little bit of soul searching. I had to figure out who I was and what I wanted and how to get it. I remember actually I hit a rock bottom one day, and I ended up in my sister's office. She worked at a local college. And I remember just sitting there crying, talking to her and saying, I hate my life. And she said, well, how is that possible? Like you have everything and you should be grateful. And so I really was having this internal struggle between what my soul was wanting and what my external world was telling me. And so I just said, you know, I don't know what I want. And she's you know, tried getting out her whiteboard and her marker and writing down all these different steps of what I should do and what I should think. And I realized in that moment that no one was going to figure out for me what made me happy, and no one was going to determine what was right for me, because nobody could know that other than me. And so when I put myself on this self-made study program, I was figuring out all of those steps. I was figuring out what was my purpose and what were my values and what was my vision for my life and my goals, and why was I thinking the way that I was thinking, and why was I showing up the way that I was showing up, because the way that I was thinking and how I was showing up was getting me my results. And so if I wanted to change my results, then I needed to change the way that I was thinking and the way that I was presenting myself in my everyday life. And so I changed my whole life. I changed my internal habits and my external habits. And by doing that, and solely by working on my mind and my emotional attachments, I was able to shift my happiness levels, and then I shifted my career, and I shifted my life. And so that's I suppose a short version of how I ended up where I am right now. When I first moved across the country to Colorado 5 years ago, I started a clarity mentoring business where I was supporting folks and entrepreneurs in gaining clarity on who they were, what they wanted, and how to get it. And then from that evolved into Climate and Culture Connection. So Climate and Culture Connection was an organization that I developed that had two different legs. It had an internal community where we were supporting business owners and entrepreneurs and figuring out who they were, what they wanted, and how to get it, and how to be able to create influence, impact, and income at greater levels in their businesses and lives. And then we also had another leg, which is our outside contracts. So we work with different types of organizations, nonprofits, small businesses to support them in developing self-leaders in their management and in their teams so that they could, again, increase their influence, impact, and income. So it's been a really fun journey and a really fun ride. We just recently evolved into Self-Leadership Global, opened up multiple city chapters to support entrepreneurs and business owners and organizations in their influence and income. And so, again, that's kind of how we ended up where we're at now.
Congrats on the growth and expansion. I mean, you're achieving things that most of the listeners on this channel want to do in different capacities. And I think that, you know, for me, it was so true. You know, I went through that same experience where that rock bottom created the need to pivot. And so once you enlightened me to the self-love factor, it really became less about what is it that I'm supposed to be feeling and this responsibility of action, and more about what do I want and what will make me happy, and how can I create an optimal level of that, because I know now that I become the greatest human version of myself by doing it, and then I'm able to then, of course, influence so many more people that way. And so that was actually the reason that so much of our attention beginning in this year started to redirect here on this channel, because it suddenly dawned on me. I mean, how freaking obvious does it have to be that I can reach, exponentially more people by using a platform like this, rather than showing up at 3 separate cities a week, speaking in front of 100 to a few hundred people per group. You're limited, and now here we are battling for 300,000 views a month or more and getting 10,000 subscribers in a month, and I just can't even believe what's happened, and it's because of this woman. And I'm here to tell and profess to all of you that you can do it yourselves. You can do this by starting with what will make you most happy. And I think I was perhaps kind of first turned on to this idea back when I first read The 4-Hour Workweek, which is a book about automation and a book about systemizing and a book about efficiency. And it's also very, very much about lifestyle design. And that's why systems and processes and automation and passive income is so powerful, because it creates freedom of choice and being able to do with your time whatever you choose. And one thing that stood out about that lesson in the book was, if you had $100 million, what would you do with your time? Not what would you buy. It's not about going on, I'd buy a yacht. It's what would you do with your time? I would spend time on a yacht. So being able to answer that question, I think is actually surprisingly more difficult for people than they might think on the surface. Just stop for a minute, pause the video if you need to, and think, what would you do with all of your time if you had $100 million right now? Because that really is a sign of who you are authentically. We're really having that genuine understanding and awareness of who you are as a person, what you most want, what are you most passionate about, what evokes that emotional overload for you. And so when she finally showed me the root of many of the reasons I was unhappy, it really stemmed into this inability to say, who am I and what do I most want? And what I was and what I am and what I most want does not involve 2 or 3 cities a week away from my loved ones and away from other ways I can spend my time, ways I can give back to other people. It just is very, very low on my list of what I would most want. And so big changes happened, and I'm so happy to say that even just 1 short year later, I've said no to every single speaking opportunity I've been offered for the second half of 2017, and have not taken a single new speaking opportunity going into 2018. And that is a whole different level for us. So,
so can I interrupt you for a moment?
I hope, yes, please do. I hope you do often.
So you hit the nail on the head with two different things that you said. One thing that you said that you talked about was lifestyle design. And that's one of the first things that we talk to people about, because what most people do is they choose a career, or they choose a business model, or they choose a business. They build this business and they work themselves into the ground, and then they're trying to fit their lifestyle into it, which I can definitely say I did for a long time, and I know that you did that as well.
That's correct.
And so that's backwards. What we teach people to do is to build their lifestyle plan first, and then choose a business model or a career that fits into your lifestyle. So the second thing that you said that you talked about was living authentically. And I think that that word authenticity or living authentically is something that's really thrown around, but here's the thing, we're never taught to know what that means for us. And confirmation from the universe.
That's right. That's the universe saying, you got it.
Confirmation. So that's specifically what we do. So what we do at Self Leadership Global, we have a methodology that we utilize called the Unabridged Leadership Methodology. And based off of 10 years of research and studying and putting things together in a way that most serves a simplistic format, we have the Unabridged Leadership Methodology, and the first thing that we go through in that methodology is self-leadership. So our first pillar is self-leadership, and within that we have 3 different leadership principles. The first one is who you were as a leader. The second one is who you're choosing to be as a leader. And then the third one is who you're becoming as a leader. And so in order for us to really live authentically and to know what that means for each individual, because that's different for every single person, and nobody's going to figure that out for us, right? We have to be able to figure that out for ourselves. We have to first and foremost have to know who we were as a leader. Where did we come from? Why do we think the way that we do? Why do we show up the way that we do? Why are we getting the results that we're getting on a consistent basis? So, and I think Michelle Brown talked about this a little bit, but between 0 and 7 years old, everything that we experience in our surroundings and our environment is taken to be true in our mind. So it's connecting neural pathways, and it's, you know, the neurons are connecting, and if we're getting into like brain development and brain research, that's really where we begin to develop all of the belief systems on who we are as humans, what's acceptable, and you know, what we should and shouldn't do, what's good or bad, right or wrong, and we take that into adulthood. And so a lot of the times what we're thinking and what we're feeling is coming from belief systems that may or may not be serving us. And so what we do is we help and support individuals in, number one, taking a really good look at why are you thinking the way that you are? What are your emotional attachments to those belief systems? And how can we start to shift that so that you're able to get the results that you want?
So what would maybe be a really great exercise, a starting point for somebody that's really just trying to enter into this awareness of self-leadership for the first time? What would be maybe a great way of just identifying maybe that genuine person, the kid at heart that you really wanted to kind of be your entire life? How would you tap back into that energy and start to use it to improve or to change?
Yeah, good question. So one of the first exercises that we put anybody through is called the core desired feelings exercise. The reason why that is, and you touched on this a little bit earlier, is we're taught to believe that when we achieve or receive this thing, then we're going to be happy. So people are always chasing the car or the partner or the amazing house or the big fat bank account. But what we've come to realize is that once people receive some of those things or most of those things, they're not satisfied, right? So they keep chasing and chasing and chasing to be able to reach satisfaction and fulfillment and peace and relaxation. But once they receive it, they don't feel any different than they felt before. And so what we do is we support individuals first and foremost in discovering, how do you want to feel? How do you want to feel every day when you wake up? You know, if you are single, how do you want to feel in the relationship that feels like true love to you, or feels like your perfect match or your perfect partner? Or when you're in business meetings, or when you're expanding your business, how do you want to feel? right? How do you want to show up every single day? Because once you start to realize what your core desired feelings are, that's what you could focus on. You could focus on those feelings and those emotions, and that's going to create a different perspective of your reality and your environment, which is going to create different results.
So is this more about maximizing each moment to where, obviously there's so much power in now, right? Just like the book. And if people could just simply understand the power of now, and for those of you that haven't read that book or haven't gone through some form of landmark education training, maybe that's a new concept for you, but there is so much power in preventing yourself from constantly thinking forward into the future or reflecting back into the past and living through mistake or regret or simply worrying about what people think about you or how you're judging yourself. So much of our time is consumed by the future, the past, or just self-critiquing, judgment and hate. And so would that have some relationship to what you're talking about here, is creating the ability to simply envision the feelings and live in those emotions and say, no, this is the actual sensation that I'm looking to feel, but I'm looking to feel it perpetually and as often as I can. Something to do with the power of now?
Yeah, to give you a really great example of that, and the story, we talked about this at our last retreat in Breckenridge, like Matthew was saying, the theme was about feeling alive. And the reason why that was because that is the feeling that I attribute to success. I associate success and feeling alive and feeling awestruck and feeling relaxed and calm. And just to tell you a quick story, I manifested a lot this past year, within these past 12 months, just from focusing on feeling alive. So it was about this time last year, I told the story at our retreat, it's about this time last year that I really got clear on what it is that I was choosing for myself for the upcoming year. And so it wasn't necessarily super specific, it was specific enough, but yet still general. So some of the things that I said was, I want to fly on my first private jet, and I wanted to experience true love, and I wanted to expand my business. And here's the thing, guys, I didn't know how to do any of that stuff. I had no clue how any of those things were going to happen. And not only that, I wanted to travel internationally. And so
you didn't have clarity on how yet, you had clarity on what. So these were the things that you became deeply clear you wanted. You just weren't exactly sure yet what the roadmap looked like.
And an even better word than wanted was choose. I had chosen those things for myself. So it was a definite decision, it was a choice, it was what I was choosing moving forward. And so that was, again, this time last year, October of last year, and it was nothing short of amazing of what happened when my mentors had me focus on one of my core desired feelings, and they said, what is it that you think of when you think of success? Like, what are the feelings that are associated with that? I'm like, gosh, I feel really alive when I think about that. And so they said, okay, that's all you're going to focus on this year. You're not going to focus on your list. You're not going to focus on your goals or your dreams. All you're going to focus on is feeling alive. And so I started to focus on feeling alive. I would wake up and I would ask myself, what could I do today that makes me feel alive? Or what does this look like to me? And it could be anything from driving down the road to seeing an awesome sunset, or it didn't really matter, but it was at the top of my mind. And so just from focusing on feeling alive, first and foremost, I fell in love with myself. And because I fell in love with myself, I was able to invite a different kind of love into my life, not just in a partner, in a companion, but in business relationships, in my family relationships. Like, everything shifted from me truly loving myself through the good, the bad, and the ugly, through the triggers and the low points and the high points. It's a matter of being patient and forgiving and accepting of self in any given moment, and just doing what you consider to be best in that moment. And so from doing that, I manifested all of those things. So in October, Matthew and I started to spend more time with each other. And then in January, I had a good friend who worked for the Denver Nuggets asked me if I wanted to go with the Nuggets on a private jet to London.
Now, wait a second. if we're gonna talk about flying privately with the Denver Nuggets, we cannot not talk about toothpicks.
Oh
It's
boy.
impossible.
This is one of my favorite stories.
Go ahead and share what exactly, how quickly somebody like this can manifest will blow your mind. Not only did this woman get a charter private jet internationally, her very first trip overseas, but tell them a little bit about just how extravagant this specific trip was for you.
So it was pretty amazing. You know, you get on this jet and there's just this buffet set up, and it's phenomenal. Any kind of food that you could want. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm eating this great food, and I'm sitting down, and all of a sudden I had something in my tooth, and so I ring the bell for the flight attendant, and she said yes, and I said, well, do you have a toothpick? She said absolutely. And so she comes back a minute later with this silver platter, this huge silver platter with one toothpick on it. I was like, oh my gosh, I just got served a toothpick on a silver platter.
That's when you know you're doing something right, my friends. So, okay, and so then you manifest a big change and growth within your business,
yes,
and that starts to hit, and now...
We completely expanded, we rebranded, so just amazing things. And I think something that's really important to share is that every time one of those opportunities came up, I almost rejected every single one.
And I did too. And
so that's something important to think about, because you're going to make choices and you're going to say, these are the things that I choose and that I want. And then when they come up, there's going to be almost this internal block or this internal fear of like, should I?
It's almost always fear, isn't it? I mean, that's what it was for me. That's what I see people experiencing more than any other emotion when it comes to stumbling blocks, implementing what we teach on this channel from a financial standpoint. It just seems like fear is that kind of common denominator, or that repeat offender that just always seems to stand in people's way, because you're forced to step out of your comfort zone. You have to accept something you're unfamiliar with, and the fear of the unknown is just a common reaction for us as humans. So I would imagine that you see this all the time.
Sure. So there's three main blocks that most humans go through in any given moment of challenge or struggle. The first block is around not feeling good enough. So it's worthiness issues. I'm not worth this, I don't deserve this. The second block is around safety. They're not feeling safe. So if you think about a time when you were in a struggle or a challenge, maybe you weren't feeling safe with the choice or where you were going. And then the third one is not feeling loved or loving or lovable. So anytime someone is in an argument or in a challenge or in a moment of turmoil, most likely either worthiness, love, or safety is being triggered from within through an emotional response.
Very, very interesting. And we have three sort of common setbacks for folks too, which we talk about often. We recently released a video on, the 3 ingredients necessary to succeed with what we teach, and that is courage and consistency and patience. And I know that these will play a significant role before you even get to the requirement of courage and the requirement of consistent application of what we're doing, or the requirement of realizing $1 million isn't going to fall into your lap, that there is a level of patience necessary. There's no instant gratification in any of this. And that comes from feeling worthy. You have to first see that you deserve what we're talking about here, and to have any sense of this is too good to be true, and what's the catch, and there's no such thing as getting rich quickly. You're completely missing what we do here, because all we're really teaching is up-leveling small little chunks at a time. We're just hitting small little base hits, one after the next, and what happens is runners start to get around the bases and score under a very methodical and structured consistency, versus going out there and trying to swing for the fences and expecting home runs and not getting them, and then leading ourselves into this space of disappointment and discouragement and frustration. But first you have to believe that you're worthwhile, that it's worth the consistency, and you have to believe that you deserve it, and you gotta love yourself enough for that. So those are huge for this. And I'm curious on, just to kind of wrap up this episode, because again guys, I'm gonna try and bring her in as much as she'll allow us, because this is just so critical. How have you seen the role of self-leadership playing a part in financial well-being? Because I know you see it show up all the time. I know that there are breakthroughs at your retreats where people are facing their financial demons. And you know, guys, listen, this channel is usually not for those in financial hardship. So if that's where you are right now, I invite you to watch all the videos. We want you to continue to participate as a viewer and to learn and to continue to advance yourself. But you really should be plugging into other sources as well. People like Dave Ramsey that'll help you get your fiscal responsibility in order first. Those that already have financial comfort often visit this channel because you want to take it to a whole new level. You want to accelerate your objectives much faster, and there's a lot that can be done when you have expert sets of eyes evaluating what you're doing, and where we start to use little banking hacks in order to legally and ethically get ahead. And so for you, when these breakthroughs are happening, what are you seeing kind of prevent people from getting to that next level? Whether they're doing great already, whether they're doing, you know, moderately well, whether they're just excelling, how then do you take somebody and bring them to that next step? What kind of things help with that, and what tends to pull people back?
Yeah, so money is a huge trigger for most people. A lot of times there's a lot of shame or guilt or frustration when it comes to moving to the next level. But what we've seen most with money, the two emotions that I would say come up most are based around confusion and fear. And so I think that that's what you really support with, because you provide a really great step-by-step opportunity for people to move through a simple yet rigorous process to creating different levels of wealth and success in their lives. And so it's great that you provide the clarity. And the fear is I think that you're working on that on the side without realizing that you're working with it on the side. So I think when fear comes in place, that's when it comes, these self-leadership skills really will be able to support you. Everything from knowing your values to your purpose to your personal vision. So you're having a why to be able to wake up to every day. I don't know that it's enough to just have a big fat bank account and that be your why. For most people, that doesn't create fulfillment.
I seldom see that. I seldom see greed as the driving motivator for people, their why, as to staying on track and remaining patient and consistent. It takes more than that for most people. Most people have to be driven by either some, you know, intense need for freedom or intense need for safety. I would say safety and freedom are by far the two most common. And not to sound, you know, too stereotypical, but we often see gender association with that too, where more often than not, the idea of ambition and achievement of the extraordinary comes with the male side of a relationship, and oftentimes the need for safety and protection and security and peace of mind comes from the female side of a relationship. And so that balance is often very complementary. And it's not always that way. In fact, I've realized that basic need of peace of mind and safety for myself is really, really highly ranked for me. So nonetheless, obviously that's a little bit off track, but I understand what you're saying, so go ahead.
Sure. One of the things that you've really taught me that I love listening to you talk about money, you talk about money as if it's a game, and it is a game. And I think people in general give a lot of power to money, and they see it as this unattainable or challenging thing to receive or to get. And when you look at it as though it's a game, and like you could always make more of it and create more of it in your life, it has a whole different energy around it.
That's true. You don't attach your happiness to it, I think, a lot of times. And so if you can kind of start to gradually but definitively remove the emotion from the process, then you become that much more anxious to strategize, and you're that much more excited about the idea of being in control and not giving so much power to the banks. And so I really appreciate you being here. If you want more of this great content, certainly I would consider subscribing to the channel. Of course, if you have had your own experiences with how self-leadership has either affected you or you currently want more information, please throw your comments below the description. And furthermore, we're gonna go ahead and put a link in the description as well to an email where you can go ahead and reach out. If you'd like to reach KellyAnne and her firm, Self Leadership Global, directly, you can do through that. I'll obviously make a warm introduction and she'll take absolute best care of you, that is for sure. So if you want any additional information how you can participate with her, who would be your ideal individual to speak with? If you're listening, what would that person be?
Someone who's been in business for a minimum of 3 to 5 years. They have a readiness and a willingness about them to be able to move through their emotional attachments and their mental blocks to be able to create a lifestyle that suits them.
Perfect. Guys, that should include a lot of you. So go ahead and send an email to the email address in the description. Go ahead and smash that like button. If you want us to do more videos like this where we can start really helping you make the mental pivots that you'll need in order to successfully apply what we're teaching in all the videos on this channel, we have to know about it. It's the only way that we get any interaction and feedback from you, and it's also a way that YouTube can go ahead and rank these videos higher so that more people like you will discover it. KellyAnne, thank you again so much, sweetheart. Appreciate it. We'll be featuring her on more videos coming up. In the meantime, subscribe, check out all of the videos on this channel, and we'll see you on the next one. Until then, make it a great day today and take great care.
Bye.